Hello and welcome to Maniac Movies. So I had a couple old videos that I had filmed before I moved. They look a little different, but I never got around to posting them. So I'm throwing them up along with a third video, and they all look at the career of Richard Stanley, director of Hardware, Dust Devil, and Color Out of Space. Color Out of Space will be new, the other two are old, and I just didn't get around to posting them, so they'll look a little different. Thank you. Oh, by the way, updates Wednesday and Friday.
We're in a time of throwaway technology.
I'll give you 30, 40, 50. And then you'd see it my way.
Only some of the stuff that gets thrown away isn't dead.
So, Richard Stanley. We'll look at the career of the director who recently got back on the map by directing Color Out of Space, which is kind of shaping up to be one of the major cult hits of the last couple of years. Pretty easy to look back at his filmography, though, because he only directed 3 movies. Well, three features. He's only got 3 features. He a bunch of shorts, a few documentaries, some music videos. I'm only looking at his 3 feature films. So, he started out very auspiciously. He started out with a big, relatively big, studio-type movie, Hardware. Awesome cyberpunk horror satire. Great movie. 1990. A few years after that, he does Dust Devil, another relatively decent-sized studio horror indie that had some production issues. But then he went on to get fired from the island of Dr. Moreau, effectively killing his career. So, more than a decade later, he pulls together Color Out of Space and gets things back on track. But we're going to start with Hardware. Now, Hardware is from Richard Stanley, who's a South African filmmaker. Hardware was intended to be a feature-length version of a short film he made when he was still a student. Now, Hardware was made when he was very young. He was in his 20s. And it was supposed to be a feature-length version of a short film he did called Incidents in an Ever-Expanding Universe, which is included on the Blu-ray. And you can definitely see the DNA of that short in this movie. But the short is purely a drama. It's a satire about a guy. See, South Africa, at least at the time, I'm not sure if this is still true, had a compulsory military service, meaning you had to serve. And it's about a young guy who kind of is pulled into the military, loses his hand, kind of ruins his relationship with his girlfriend, leaves him this sort of wrecked shell of a man. And that's the movie Stanley wanted to make. But no one liked that movie. No one wanted to make that movie. And after rewriting the script a few times, Richard Stanley has said that Hardware was the worst version of the incidents in an ever-expanding universe that he wrote. He basically just looked at what was popular in movies at the time and tried to shoehorn that into his script. And the end result is fantastic. I love this movie. This is one of my favorite movies. This is actually one of my very favorite views of a dystopian sci-fi future. I would honestly put this up there with The Terminator. That said, he stole the idea. So Richard Stanley, almost certainly out of frustration, possibly just by accident, stole the idea from a Judge Dredd comic and was sued and ended up having to pay some money. But I can kind of see how it would have happened, where if he kept rewriting this story, he eventually said, screw it, let's just do that thing that I saw in that comic and see if they take that. Being a young guy and maybe not entirely understanding how copyright law works. But I've never read the comic, I've never gotten my hands on it, never really tried. But from what I understand, it's pretty one-to-one in terms of what happens. Now, Hardware is the story, which definitely, again, has a lot of the stuff from Incidents in an Ever-Expanding Universe, because it's about a young guy played by Dylan McDermott named Mo. His actual name is Moses. And he comes back from serving in the Corps to a completely desolated city. There's trash everywhere, old junked out cars, massive unemployment, street vendors. It appears that the United States, which is where this seems to be taking place, it doesn't seem to be in South Africa, it appears that the United States has become a third world nation due to nuclear fallout from a war. We don't really learn that much about the war, but we definitely know that it's ongoing. We know that Mo was deployed. He's gotten the chance to return home. He's selling off some scrap that he kind of stole from the military. And while he's doing that with his buddy Shades, who's this stoner-ass hippie that he hangs out with, he comes across this zoner, kind of bum that wanders around old battlefields picking up scraps to sell. And the zoner has found the Mark 13 battle droid, smashed to hell pieces of a battle droid. And at the pawn shop, the illicit underground pawn shop run by a dwarf with an obviously dubbed voice, he sees the zoner with his smashed android, and knowing that his girlfriend, who he's come to visit, played by Stacey Travis, is into sculpting and likes using found materials in her sculptures, he buys the smashed to hell battle droid off the guy and takes it home to her. He gets to her building after taking a Sikh taxi with Lemmy from Motorhead, who's awesome in his little cameo, to her building, finds out that the building's gates have been smashed and the homeless have overrun it. Mo gets to her place. She's essentially a shut-in. She basically doesn't ever leave. She's on, the government teat. She doesn't have a job. She just collects welfare. He gives her the Mark 13 droid. You see the conflict between them, that she is not really so much a pacifist as a nihilist. She just genuinely doesn't seem to care anymore. She's so disillusioned that she doesn't want any part of anything. And he kind of views himself, at one point he says he hopes it comes to survival of the fittest because he considers himself to be the fittest. Even though they keep mentioning that he's almost certainly been exposed to radiation and it's only a matter of time till cancer sets in. He's got this really bad cough throughout the movie that keeps kind of slowing him down. And he's also got the metal hand. But they kind of clash back and forth. It's clear that there's definitely some differing political opinions here. And there's also this weird vibe that she may have hooked up with Shades while he was deployed, but that's not really explored all that much. So he gives her the Mark 13. She kind of builds this weird-ass sculpture up around it. It's obviously meant to represent American militarism because she spray paints the droid with the American flag. Then, and she's watching a music video from the heavy metal band Gwar, but you're hearing Ministry, which has always struck me as funny, that I guess they either didn't have the rights to the Gwar song, but they used the video anyway. So they dropped in a Ministry song. I think at the time Gwar probably would have cost more to license than Ministry, but I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, I just always thought that was funny. So she watches Gwar, she listens to Ministry, she sculpts the Mark 13 into this weird sculpture thing. Then Mo gets a call from the pawn shop guy, the dwarf that runs the pawn shop, saying he needs to come there soon. The pawn shop guy has figured out that this droid might actually be worth some real money. It's a high-tech military prototype. So Mo rushes out, leaving her alone with the Mark 13, which has a built-in reconstruction mechanism where it will use found materials from its environment to rebuild its exoskeleton, to rebuild itself. And it immediately is flipped into kill mode. It just starts destroying. And her only hope is the comic book guy from The Simpsons. Seriously, she has this stalker. And this dude, keep in mind, this movie was made in 1990. This guy is the original incel. He just sits there watching her through an infrared telescope. He has crap he's stolen, presumably from her trash, all over his wall. He's obsessed with the one time he was in her apartment to install her security system, and she made him a cup of coffee. He sends her, he leaves crap outside her place. He makes obscene phone calls to her. I don't know, he's obsessed with porn. So yeah, this guy is the original incel. He's hilarious. And he looks just like the comic book guy from The Simpsons. I swear to God, he does. With the big flowered shirt, fat guy. He's played by William Hootkins, who is one of the most famous character actors you've never heard of. He popped up in a lot of famous movies. He was in Star Wars: A New Hope. He played Porkins, the fat X-Wing pilot. Stay on target. Stay on target. Because that's what you name a fat character in your movie if you're a sensitive filmmaker. You name him Porkins. He was also the corrupt cop in Tim Burton's Batman. Think about the future, Jack. That guy. He's actually a really good actor because of the the movies I've seen him in, he never looks remotely the same or sounds remotely the same. Even he's in Richard Stanley's next movie, Dust Devil, and you would never in a million years think that that's the same actor. He's completely different. It's impressive. So, William Hook, I mean, this movie's story is really simple. Battle droid comes to life. Lady is trapped in, kind of her own prison. She's built this shelter to protect herself from the outside world, but the outside world comes to her, and then she's trapped in the shelter she created for herself. It's kind of a commentary, I would say, about not hiding from the world.
A creature that combines the technology of a computer, the deceit of a human, and the killer instinct of a machine.
Chase, listen to me. This is serious. Jill is in trouble.
So, with a plot so simple, you can kind of explain the whole movie in just a few minutes. It's an easy movie to explain, but what's so cool is the world Richard Stanley builds around this. I love the world building on this movie. Now, world building is kind of an overused term now because every movie wants to build its own world, and you got the superhero movies and then all the sci-fi movies. But this movie does a great job, and I guess maybe I just kind of respond well to the cynicism of it. I really enjoy that this is kind of an industrial metal version of the future. Like, you've got Iggy Pop from Iggy and the Stooges, old punk rock guy. It's this asshole DJ named Angry Bob, who's based on the sort of shock jocks from the 90s, the guys who were really over the top obnoxious on purpose. He's screaming stuff like, "Get out and get a job. There was a break in the Christmas ceasefire, and that means kill, kill, kill." It's just insane crap like that. They'll just walk by a dead mother with her child tied to her wrist, and no one's acknowledging it. They have street vendors. Like I said, Lemmy is in this, I guess it's Waterworld in this future too, because Lemmy is just riding around in this aquatic taxi with a gun strapped to him in this filthy green water. They're selling non-radiated reindeer steaks. There's just a lot of crazy shit like that in this movie. It's really fun. There's a lot of world building, and the two lead characters are very interesting. Dylan McDermott is great. I love his character Mo in this. He's a really interesting, engaging kind of anti-hero. And Stacey Travis is fantastic in this movie. As a scream queen, she's really great. And I wish I'd seen more of her. And you could say that about most scream queen, because so many of them just kind of had that one lead role and kind of fizzled out. Now, she didn't exactly fizzle out. I looked up her IMDb, and she's done a ton of television, but not a lot that you'd really say she's famous for. It's like a guest spot here, a small part here. IMDb actually says she's known for Ghost World. I've seen Ghost World. I don't remember it all that well, but I definitely don't remember her in it. But she's really good in this. She's very game. She plays the kind of pseudo-intellectual, self-serious artist very well. And that plays off Dylan McDermott's arrogant young soldier in an interesting way. It's fun to imagine these two as a couple. They would not get along. And that's sort of what the movie implies, is that the only reason they're still together is because he keeps getting deployed, so they're only actually together for short periods of time. But the lead characters are really good. The world building is awesome. The visuals are great. I love the way Richard Stanley directs this. For a young director, he brings a lot of style to it. It's very cool. I'm relatively sure Richard Stanley experiments with controlled substances, because his movies always have a lot of kind of garish lighting and hallucinatory imagery in them. Now, I know he's a big fan of giallos, but still, this goes well beyond what you would do in a late 70s Dario Argento movie. This is just some trippy shit. So I like all of that. The Mark 13 is a very cool monster. It's a little clunky, which is, I'm sure, just a matter of budget and limitations, but it's still cool that it's tactical, that tactile, that it's there, that it moves, that it's real, that it seems like an actual threat. I mean, if you make this today, it would just be CG. That's all. They would just get lazy and they would just CG the whole thing. So it's really awesome the way they do it, and the way this big, giant robot with needles for fingers and a giant rotating drill penis. I have no idea why they built that onto a battle robot, but someone thought it needed to be there. It actually tries to rape her with the giant metal drill penis at one point. Apparently Richard Stanley's crew actually walked off the set. They were so disturbed by it. Stacey Travis plays it very well, though. She screams, she fights back, she cries. I mean, she's a very game actress in this movie. She's naked. She gets lit on fire. I mean, it's the actress on fire. She's on fire. There's no CG at this point in 1990. They just lit her arm on fire. And not a lot of actors are going to let you literally light them on fire. So she's awesome in this flick. Dylan McDermott's top build. She's really more the lead. She's in it a bit more than him, but they're both in it. They're both very good. Neither one's quite great. They kind of show their inexperience, or possibly Richard Stanley's inexperience as a director, directing actors, but it's perfectly serviceable, and it's still way above what you would get through a standard low-budget horror film. It's way above, and this is a very ambitious movie. For a relatively low-budget movie, like I say, you get a lot of crowd shots, you get a lot of the sense of the world they live in. You know, I know that they kind of scaled back, you know, in the second half of the movie, just kind of limiting it to her apartment, but it doesn't feel scaled back. It feels like this is just natural progression of the story. The supporting cast is kind of funny. The only one I've heard of is William Hootkins, but you've got some decent actors here and there. Shades is kind of funny. The gore is really good. It's very over the top. It's sparse. You don't get a ton of it, but what's there is really, you know, some gory ass eye gouging, bodies being cut in half, that kind of thing. And you care about the characters. I am invested in their story. There's a lot of good here, and basically the bad comes down to budgetary constraints and the fact this was 1990. So if you're bothered by watching an older movie, you're just gonna be bothered by this, because you can see this, like, there's a scene where a guy's dangling off a building and it's obvious green screen, but the stunt work is good. And the Mark 13. So apparently that was pure coincidence. They called it the Mark 13, just plucking a name out of the sky, then found out that was a Bible verse. So they read it, and no flesh shall be spared as part of that. So that was kind of cool. Yeah, this is my favorite of Richard Stanley's three movies. I think that this one, he kind of worked completely within his realm of expertise and his abilities. With Dust Devil, not so much, and Color Out of Space, I think he was a bit rusty. This, to me, is an A+ movie. I love this movie. If you can forgive it, the budgetary constraints and, you know, the little issues here and there, this is a very cool, very cynical look at a kind of an overly militarized future with no infrastructure, where basically you work for the army or you are effectively unemployed and homeless. You know, it even says at the end that you know, if you want to get a job, come work for a factory constructing military equipment. So there was a planned sequel that never got made. I'm kind of glad it didn't get made, because the description of it sounded kind of lame, and also way outside of what they could have done within their budget. It actually kind of reminded me of the sequel to Lawnmower Man, one of those sequels that people completely forgot happened, you know, the Lawnmower Man 2. All I really remember about it is it had terrible special effects and sucked. And none of the actors returned either. That was kind of funny. Yeah, so I love this movie. I love that it's a standalone movie. It's got some cool music. It's got one song that they play a lot that I actually really don't like. It's on the it's even on the menu. It's This Is What You Got, This Is What You Get. That one's kind of tiresome, but most of the other songs I like. So I highly recommend this flick. If you saw Color Out of Space and you were thinking of jumping back into his filmography, this would be the place to start. Then go to Dust Devil. There's 3 cuts of Dust Devil, and all 3 of them are flawed. Signing out.